Hello, and welcome to Depth Insights, where we take a depth psychological look at news, topics, and events going on in your world today. I'm your host, Bonnie Bright, and I'm also the founder of an online community called Depth Psychology Alliance. And Psychology Alliance is for everyone who is interested in the fields of depth and Jungian psychology. And you're invited to come check it out at www.depthpsychologyalliance.com. It's free to join, and we have all kinds of events, a forum, discussions, videos, archives, articles, links, all kinds of things for anyone who would like to connect with other people who are interested in the same kinds of things and also to learn and get educated. And one of the things that we're doing at Depth Psychology Alliance is we are offering from time to time special study groups in which we are able to take on topics that we feel are very relevant in the world and in the field of depth psychology. And we're going to be having one of those special study groups going on in the month of May. And that special study group will start on May 1st and run through the month, and it's all done in an open written forum in which you can ask questions to the person who's running the group, make comments, you can engage in discussion with other people. So in the month of May, our special study group is going to be run by Darlene Viggiano, and the group is called Dream On, the Role of Dreams in Spiritual Crises. And this is an area of expertise for Dr. Viggiano, who has written a book on the topic, and it's called Dreams and Dreamlike Experiences, Their Role in Spiritual Emergence Processes. And Darlene has co-led group dream analysis for Saybrook University, where she also presented on hypnotic dreaming. And she led an experiential workshop on using dreams to identify and treat spiritual problems for the Society of the Anthropology of Consciousness. And she's also provided a peer presentation on hypnotic dreams for both the Society for Clinical and Experimental Hypnosis and at the University of Phoenix. And Darlene is also the author of numerous articles, and she's going to be providing a wide range of materials for the study group during the month of May. And I wanted to invite everyone to be part of that. The study group during the month of May is going to be free of charge, and Darlene will be checking in regularly and providing a curriculum and offering some of the materials, sending you to places where you can find more materials online and resources. And it's going to be a very exciting month in which we can all engage in this process of dreams and dreamlike experiences during spiritual crises. So, Darlene, that was a very long introduction to what I think is going to be a really amazing month filled with all kinds of great information. Thank you so much for being with me today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Bonnie. I'm very excited to be doing this, and I'm looking forward to the month of May because of it.
Well, me too. I'm really grateful for you being willing to spend your time because, of course, you know, you're not getting much out of this beyond just the capacity to be able to share your work with others, and I know that that's really a passion for you. Can you just start us off and talk a little bit about this topic, because this is something that I think is really powerful. The role of dreams when one goes into spiritual crises is something that, speaking for myself, I know I went through a period of time when I had a pretty intense, what I would call a spiritual crisis. Stan Groff, who's one of the pioneers of transpersonal psychology, first started the spiritual emergency, and it's a time when something that is considered spiritual happens to you and it causes havoc in your personal life, essentially. And I know that if I had known more about the process of dreams and dream work at that time, it probably would have provided something really powerful for me. But tell us about you. Is there something personal that led you to this work, or how did you actually engage in this in the beginning?
Absolutely. For me, it was almost a little bit the other way around, where I was going through more of a personal crisis, and that awakened my spirituality, which I hadn't realized was part of my personal crisis. And the way that that spirituality was awakened was through the dream world and through various dreamlike states that I had during this crisis. And this was in my 30s, and today is my 52nd birthday, so it's carried me through thus far, and I'm very happy about that. It's helped me to grow, and it's helped me to become the professional that I am today and to be able to share this work with others, which I feel is a calling for me. That's the whole reason that I got into being a psychotherapist, was because of this psycho-spiritual crisis that I went through and the desire to give back, the calling for me to give back based on how helpful it was to me to have my dreams lead me on and to help me develop both personally and professionally. So I like to be able to share that with others. I like to share it with my patients, and I like to share it with my students.
Yeah, I think in our field, when we're sort of immersed in the field of depth psychology or Jungian psychology, for me, this idea of spiritual crisis and working with dreams seems fairly normal to me now. But certainly there was not always a time when it was that normal or that obvious to me. Do you find a lot of people are able to identify that they have had or experienced a spiritual crisis of some sort?
Well, it depends on where they come from. So, for example, when I first got introduced to this whole concept, it was like, ooh, scary, because I was basically an agnostic, and I had always wanted to be able to believe, but I felt I needed an experience that I could know what I was going through and what my connection to spirit really is. But every time I would have some sort of an experience, I would be more scared of it than welcoming of it. And so being in a Jungian therapeutic situation, obviously that's their playground. That's their whole bailiwick. So I feel like I was sort of born again and raised into that whole psycho-spiritual, transpersonal Jungian realm. It's been not only an eye-opener, but a horizon broadener, an entrance into a whole new world. It's been extremely fulfilling for me. One thing has led to another. Perhaps some would see the culmination of it as being this book, but for me, I feel like it's yet another commencement. Every time I feel like I've graduated and achieved something, it turns out to be a commencement of yet the next thing, whatever there is to grow. So some people, like, for example, I know that you're at Pacifica and I've been at Saybrook, both as a student and now as an adjunct professor. And so if people are in those types of schools, or they're here on the Jungian network, Depth Insights, then it's very normal for us. But for those who are just getting introduced, and certainly for my colleagues in the field, say, for example, at Kaiser Permanente, not a lot of people really have put much stock in the whole spiritual realm. Everybody is so into the science and the materialistic aspect of how we do our science that we forget about the intuitive and the imaginal and how that feeds into the world of science itself. So I'm having to do a lot of educating around this. And luckily, it just so happens that the person who's in charge of the postdocs at Kaiser came from a spiritual background himself, so he is having me educate the postdocs at Kaiser around this, and I'm finding that very fulfilling as well.
Wow, well, that's really exciting for me to hear, because a lot of people who listen to this show and who I've interacted with on Depth Psychology Alliance know that one of my really profound desires is to help get this kind of work out into the world. I discovered it, I felt, quite late in life and lately in my life, and so I just feel like it's had such a profound effect on me, not just during work, but just exploring aspects of spirituality and understanding essentially what it is that we're doing here, being able to put some context to, life on the planet, making meaning of life, I guess. And I feel like depth psychology is such a profound way of doing that. So it's exciting to hear that companies like Kaiser are open to that kind of thing. And, I just hope that more and more will happen.
Yeah, it's in pockets. And, I understand this piece about feeling like it happens late in life, and it felt that way for me too. Basically, what I thought was a midlife crisis turned out to also be a psycho-spiritual crisis. And I think that might be the case for very many people. And that's, one of the discoveries that I was making in the book that you referenced at the beginning. And so that's part of what I like to share with people. And some of the articles that I've been able to publish in peer-reviewed journals have been about these different aspects of the work that I've been doing. The aspect of midlife, the aspect of the function of dreams as opposed to the meaning of dreams, the aspect of dealing with spiritual crisis, the science around the whole thing. So in different ways, I've been putting the work out there from various aspects and from various hooks, depending on, the audience that I'm reaching at the moment.
Yeah, well, this is great, and I'm just so excited you're doing the study group because I think it's really going to be an opportunity for people to dig into the research that you've done. And as you mentioned to me, the aims of the study group are going to be to increase psycho-spiritual awareness, increase emotional growth, and also offer knowledge about Jungian-based dream research. So anyone who's interested in any of those things is likely to really enjoy this free online study group during the month of May on Depth Psychology Alliance. Let's talk a bit about the book because I know this has been a culmination of a pretty amazing body of work for you. The book is quite significant, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, but why don't you share with us what led to the completion of this book? It can't have been a simple and easy thing. How did you actually get to the process of writing a book, and what was that like for you?
Well, it actually started out as a dissertation. I was at Saybrook University doing my Ph.D., and my team was Dr. Jeannie Achterberg, who was quite famous. She just recently deceased, unfortunately. Dr. Stanley Krippner, who is a huge name in the dream field, and also Dr. James Hollis, who all the Jungians are very enamored of course, and I am too. And he made a very big contribution to the work that I did in the dissertation, as did, of course, Jeannie and Stanley. And so with Stanley is where I really came to the kind of core or the crux of what the topic was going to be. And then with James Hollis, or Jim, we actually fleshed out what the kinds of research questions were going to be within the broader general rubric of what I was studying. And of course, Jeannie helped so much with the methodology. But I guess in essence, where the whole thing came from was, I would have to say, from my soul, because, the fact that I had been through this process myself, and the fact that this was what called me to work with patients in the first place, meant to me that I needed to pull into one sort of container, being this book in the end, all of the work that I had been doing since my 30s around the journaling and the coming to fruition of my own spirituality, all the twists and turns that has taken. I remember at one point in my therapy, I was sort of quoting the Grateful Dead, what a long, strange trip it's been. And in so many ways, it's been a wonderful journey for me. And it all started with my dreams and in therapy. And it really, truly is that this book is in some way a culmination of all that. And it's very deep, meaningful to me personally and professionally, and I feel it needs to be shared. So it's extraordinarily exciting that you're presenting this opportunity out there. Such opportunity never existed before. The interest, the technology, everything is coming together to fruition to create this moment. And it really is, for me, synchronistic that we're getting to do this right now, especially with the timing of all of this. So I appreciate your willingness to help me put this out there. It needs to be shared.
I agree, absolutely. And, there's a really nice blurb that James Hollis wrote on your behalf, which is on the webpage, actually, for the study group, where people can go learn more about this. And you can find that webpage at www.depthinsights.com, INSIGHTS.com. And there is a link on the home page that will take you to this page for the study group where you can learn more about Darlene Viggiano and the book and her work on dreams and dreamlike experiences that occur during spiritual crises. And Jim Hollis, it's long, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but one thing he does say is, it raises serious questions, meaning your work, raises serious questions about the life of the soul, how it shows up in insistent ways, and how we are all asked to grow more than we had in mind. From such summonses to growth, the life of the soul is served. This book brings that point home. And I just thought that was so poignant and really profound, because anyone who's been in some kind of a spiritual crisis, and you know what, sometimes we can't tell the difference between a personal crisis and a spiritual crisis. I mean, there's really no way to separate them. Every personal crisis, I think, is a spiritual crisis in some way, and vice versa. And it's interesting, we talked about how you mentioned how you were in a personal or a midlife crisis and it led to the psycho-spiritual crisis. For me, I think I had a sort of spiritual experience that sent me directly into a midlife crisis. And so it doesn't matter which one you start with. It's bound to encompass both sides of that. And so that's why I just think this work is really so profound. And I'm wondering if you can just tell us a little bit about some of the research that you've done, or if you have examples of specific dreams or dreamlike experiences that you can just tease us with a little bit. I'm sure you'll cover more of this during the month of May in the Special Online Study Group.
Oh, yeah, that's where it's going to get really exciting. You know, the work itself, because like Jim Hollis said, there's a certain insistence of the soul upon doing this work. And so whether you end up grabbing the tiger by the tail or the nose or the paw, whether it shows up as a personal crisis or a spiritual crisis to begin with, it does all up in that same place of needing to grow from the inside out, peeling back the layers that society has placed upon us, our family has placed upon us, and getting down to that deep root of the soul and letting that be the place from which we grow. So maybe because we're on the phone, the first case that comes to mind is a case that I did write up in the book, and it's of a fellow who was working on a crisis line. And he, at the same time, was having a spiritual crisis where he ended up being sort of on a spiritual line with supposedly a deceased grandparent, where he was starting to get sort of like channeling messages from this deceased grandparent. And, that whole thing about channeling, there's one of those where people have opinions about whether to believe this or not to believe this. And he, too, was of the mind that, well, gee, I don't really necessarily buy into that this is my dead ancestor or whatever. But, boy, I'm certainly getting a message here, and I'm certainly finding that if I get out of the way, if I take my ego out of the picture as to whether this could be true or real or, what this means for me personally, if I just step aside and let it be, I'm ending up having a very profound experience in the help that I'm able to provide on the crisis line this man was finding. So I'm speaking as if I were him. And this was what was going on for him. And I wrote about this, and I called it Mainline Connection. If people go to academia.edu and look up my name, Darlene Viggiano, they will find the poster session that I did on my dissertation, which then became the book. And one of the cases that was in both the poster session and in the book was this mainline connection. And it has a picture of two telephone speakers connected to each other, old-fashioned ones. And so this was one of the experiences that was related to me by one of my participants, and that got written up and published. And, he found it profound, I found it profound to hear about, and most importantly, the people that he was working with on the crisis line. They didn't need to know anything about the channeling, but the experience that they had on that crisis line, being able to ride through a crisis and come to the other end successfully with a good outcome, is something that he attributed to being able to connect with spirit and notice that there were actually three on the line, him, the caller, and this other spiritual presence or essence, whether it was an entity or not, that as long as he stepped back and got out of the way and let that be the guiding factor, the call would go very, very well to a successful place where the person was able to hang up, no longer in crisis. And he attributed this to the channeling experiences that he was having off the phone with supposedly his deceased grandparent. And so, whether that attribution makes sense or not, it had a very helpful and healthy effect on the patient that would be on the other line on the phone. And that was a very big teaching moment for the person who was growing in his capability of being able to offer counseling on a crisis line. And then that led him to be able to become a trainer for other people who would be on the crisis line. Obviously, he couldn't necessarily teach them to do what he was doing specifically, but I'm sure he was able to impart about, opening up and offering space and letting what needed to happen, and being calm and in a peaceful enough state to be able to promote that and to offer space for that, to hold the container for that. So that is a huge, far-reaching impact, not just between him and whoever called, but also for all of the people that he was then able to train, not to do, obviously, the channeling, but to do this other aspect of the work of opening space, leaving space, being able to hold in a container what was going on in the phone call. So I thought that one was pretty profound to share.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And of course, you can't not be changed through this kind of direct experience. I mean, whatever happened to him, it's even hard sometimes to articulate, and we probably can't, even you who did this kind of research with him, probably can't begin to even understand all the ways in which that kind of experience changed him. And I presume this is what you're referring to as a dream-like experience, because of course it was not a typical nighttime dream, but it was something that was very unusual that occurred to him. And I just wanted to point out actually how this is very interesting, that unfortunately, or interestingly, as you were telling this story of him, there was a lot of static on the line, and I think people will still hear it. But it was just really interesting that it's almost as soon as you started telling that story, that showed up, and then as soon as you finished the actual story and moved into more of the analytical piece of that experience, it stopped. So I think I was having my own little dreamlike experience there with somebody else on the line.
It's like, the technological synchronicity of a third entity having its say.
So very, very interesting, to say the least. Well, Darlene, I think this work, again, we've touched on how important we both feel that it is. Can you maybe articulate for us what you feel the people who are involved in the study group in the month of May will be able to take away from this? What will they be learning and walking away with from the experience?
A lot will depend on what they bring to it. I know what I'm going to offer to it. The main things that I'm really hoping that they'll get out of it is two-pronged, a personal satisfaction with what they're learning and also a professional satisfaction with what they're then able to bring to bear, say with clients or with students or in writing or in presentations. I don't know who is actually going to participate in the study group, but I would imagine that there will be some clinicians, some professors, whoever will be involved. Perhaps people will be homemakers and they will have some of their own spiritual crises that they're going through, and hopefully this will feed them and nourish their souls and give them a chance to grow from the inside out, to participate in the work so that then it could be shared further with others. In hypnosis, in Ericksonian hypnosis, there's a thing called passing the trance. And when you get into a study group like this, sometimes, just like we had a very clear example of just now with the static on the phone when we were talking about the mainline connection, sometimes synchronicity will come up and have its say in what will be added. The value added is right there, So that's why whether people are able to purchase the book or not, the material that we present and what people will bring to the group is going to be organic and provide the prima materia, right, for the philosopher's stone that we hopefully all achieve at some point. And so there are so many different opportunities, so many different ways that we can connect. Maybe it'll turn into a Skype kind of thing. Maybe it'll turn into nested electronic conversations. Maybe it'll turn into phone conversations. You know, it's going to be organic. It's going to be based on what people need and what people want and what people bring to bear. Because I have done the group dream analyses at Saybrook, another thing that I can offer is Montague Ullman's way of doing group dream work. And so I have the Jungian basis, and I have other things that I could bring to the table. And a lot is going to depend on how that mixes with what the participants bring. It's very important to me to let the participants' needs be what guides the study group. This is not an ego trip for me about what I want everybody to do and to learn, and like it's not like I'm trying to present some sort of dharma that everybody's supposed to follow, right? I'm not a guru. This is something where I want people to be able to experience their own inner process, to bring that forward, to bring that out, and to see what grows naturally and organically from this. And I trust, because of my past experience, that this will be something very, very satisfying to all who participate as a result of coming from that spirit and coming from that place.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're really onto something about keeping it organic. And I just want to articulate, I guess, that anyone who is interested in participating, clearly, you know, you don't need to worry if you're not that technically adept, which some of us are not, or if you don't know how much time you're going to have, or if you don't know if you can purchase the book. And I will just mention, the book is actually a little bit pricey. As Darlene mentioned to me, it's done through a German publisher, and there are, you know, reasons that it costs that much to produce it. But if you can buy the book, that's great, but you don't have to. There will certainly be other materials that are provided, and the group will go on whether you have the book or not. I think that it's really profound work, and of course it's based on such succinct research as James Hollis mentions, and so I think that that's important to know. And it's certainly not more than a lot of textbooks these days, too. But at any rate, I just want to really encourage everyone, if you're interested in the topic at all, of dreams and dreamlike experiences that occur during periods of psycho-spiritual crisis, that you should absolutely join the online study group in the month of May. You can do that by going directly to depthpsychologyalliance.com and go under groups, and you'll see a section for special study groups there, and it will be there. If you're not a member of Depth Psychology Alliance, you will need to sign up to be a member of Depth Psychology Alliance. It is free to join, and it's quite a remarkable community, I think, and certainly offers a lot of other opportunities. But definitely during the month of May, this will be a great opportunity to study with Darlene Viggiano, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist, by the way, also an adjunct professor at Saybrook, as well as you have your Ph.D. from Saybrook. Darlene, thank you so much for spending this time to describe the experience. I'm really looking forward to seeing what emerges from this. So thank you for sharing your birthday with us as well. I know this is a big day for you, so I really appreciate your passion and your willingness to share.
Thank you so much. I very much appreciate the opportunity and the venue that you have provided. This is unique, it's special, and it's very much in keeping with what I think is the goal of Jungian work, which is to take what's inside of us and bring that out into the world. And it's clear that you're doing that, and it's very much in line with what I want to do with my book and my presentation. So it's a good fit, and I appreciate the mutuality of our work together.
Yeah, thank you, Darlene. I do appreciate that, too. And, of course, it takes a community, you know. I mean, you and I are each doing what we feel we can do and we want to do, but, of course, there are a lot of people in the community that have come together in Depth Psychology Alliance who are willing and wanting to do the same thing. And, frankly, you know, just by participating in any way, it adds to the community. Whether you know a lot, I really appreciate that you alluded to the fact some people may be homemakers, some people may be professors. You know, we have a lot of artists there. We have a lot of analysts and therapists. We have a lot of coaches. People come from all walks of life, and what it takes to be a community really is just participation and the willingness to step up and do whatever, to play whatever your role is in the community. So thank you for that. And I will also remind people that we have the book club, the online book club going on also during the month of May. Each month there's a different author. And during the month of May, it will be Dr. Tom Cavalli, who is a psychotherapist based in Southern California, and his specialty is alchemy. So he'll be doing his book, Embodying Osiris. That also starts on May 1st. You can join both of these groups if you'd like, so please feel free to sign up for both. And again, you can participate at whatever level you wish. It's done in an open written forum, and you can log on and read other people's comments, make comments, ask questions. And as Darlene mentioned, there may be some organic events that take place that shape up over the course of the month. Maybe she'll come back and talk to us in kind of more of a teleseminar format. So we'll see what happens there. And you can find out more about Darlene on her website. And she'll be sharing this with you, of course, during the month of May. But if you want to go look now, you can check her out at spiritualdreams.yolasite. That's the YOLASITE.com. spiritualdreams.yolasite.com. And she does have a Facebook page, Dreams and Dream Life Experiences. And then, of course, again, there will be all of the information for the study group can be found on depthinsights.com. That's DEPTHINSIGHTS.com. Depth Insights is a public site, and that's why we put a lot of the information there so that you can go find out about it, check it out, even if you're not a member of Depth Psychology Alliance. And if you want to participate, you can go become a member of Depth Psychology Alliance for free and then join the group from there. So a lot of explanations, but it's just prepping you for what I'm sure will be a really wonderful month. And again, Darlene, thank you so much for everything. I look forward to May.
Same here. Thank you so much, and I'm very excited that this is taking place. I appreciate it very much.